Alien commanders horrified. We only battled a human scout unit. The war room of the Dominion flagship grew silent as Fleet Commander stared at the battle recordings. His 4 eyes blinked one after another. This was a habit he had developed over 200 years of military service. It happened whenever he felt nervous or confused. Around the large black table, 11 other commanders of the Dominion watched the same recording. Their faces showed the same disbelief. "Play it again," said. His voice was barely louder than a whisper. The holographic display came to life once more. It showed the space battle above the planet IV. This had been their strongest position in the outer territories. They had defended it with 800 warships. They had 3 orbital defense platforms floating in space around the planet. They had more than 2 million soldiers on the ground below. The humans had come with only 12 ships. Remembered when he first received the scout reports about these human vessels. He had laughed. 12 ships against his mighty armada. These humans were either crazy or very stupid. Maybe both. He had ordered his fleet to attack immediately. He was sure this would be easy. His gunners would use these tiny human ships for target practice. He had been terribly wrong. The recording played on. Watched his ships explode one after another. He watched his proud fleet fall apart against an enemy that should not have been able to scratch their paint. On the bridge of the human reconnaissance frigate Wanderer, Lieutenant Commander Moore stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She watched the alien fleet moving toward them on her display screen. Was a small woman. She had short brown hair and calm gray eyes. Those eyes had seen more combat than most admirals who were twice her age. She was 34 years old, but she fought like someone who had been doing this forever. "Contact established," said Ensign Danny Park from the communications station. He was young, maybe 25, with black hair and quick fingers that moved across his controls like a piano player. 800+ hostile vessels moving to intercept us. 3 orbital platforms are coming online. Nodded slowly, her face showed no fear. "About what we expected. Chris, are you getting all this?" Senior Chief Christopher Hayes worked hard at the sensor station. His fingers danced across multiple displays at the same time. He was a big man with broad shoulders and a thick neck. His head was shaved bald, and he had a small scar above his left eye from a battle 3 years ago. Every ship class, every weapon signature, every formation pattern. The intelligence boys back home are going to love this data. "If we survive to deliver it," said Lieutenant from the weapons console. He was the oldest member of the bridge crew at 42 years old. He had gray hair at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of squinting at targeting displays. He was a veteran of the Mars colonial uprising who had followed through 3 previous reconnaissance missions. He trusted her completely, but he was also a realist. "We will survive," said firmly. There was no doubt in her voice. "This is what we trained for. All ships execute pattern Gamma 7. Let us see what these can really do." The 12 human vessels broke their formation. They scattered in what looked like random directions. To the commanders watching from their massive warships, it looked like the humans were panicking. It looked like they were running away in fear. It was anything but panic. Every move was planned. Every ship knew exactly where to go. High Marshal commanded the Dominion's 3rd Assault Group. This was a collection of 160 warships. These ships represented the finest military engineering his species had ever produced. Each one was the size of a small city. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. When saw the human vessels scatter, he saw an opportunity to destroy them easily. "Pursue and destroy," he ordered. His voice was confident, almost bored. "Focus all fire on the nearest target." 40 of his warships turned and chased a single human frigate. This ship was called the Pathfinder according to their intercepted communications. It was tiny compared to his vessels. It should have been an easy kill. They opened fire with everything they had. Plasma lances shot through space like burning spears. Particle beams created a web of destruction that no vessel should have been able to avoid. The space around the Pathfinder lit up with enough firepower to crack a planet. The Pathfinder did not just survive, it danced. The small ship moved with impossible grace. It weaved between energy beams that should have been impossible to dodge. The human pilot seemed to know where every shot would go before it was fired. The ship's hull shimmered with some kind of energy field. The few shots that did connect simply bounced away at strange angles. "What kind of shielding is this?" demanded. He leaned forward in his command chair, his 4 eyes wide with surprise. Before anyone could answer him, the Pathfinder returned fire. A single missile launched from its front. It was a tiny thing, so small that its tactical officer waved his hand dismissively. "One missile," the tactical officer said. "It will not even scratch our paint." The missile split into 16 separate warheads. Each warhead split again into 64 smaller pieces. Over 1,000 individual projectiles screamed towards formation. They moved at speeds his sensors could barely track. They moved at a large fraction of the speed of light itself. His point defense systems opened fire. These systems had never failed him before. They had shot down thousands of enemy missiles over the years. They proved worthless against targets moving this fast. In the time it takes a heart to beat 3 times, lost 18 warships. 18 massive vessels, each crewed by over 5,000 warriors, simply ceased to exist. They became expanding clouds of debris and fire. "Retreat," gasped. His confident voice was gone. Now he sounded like a frightened child. "All units retreat and regroup." But the Pathfinder was not finished with them. It pursued like a hunting animal chasing wounded prey. Its weapons fired with perfect precision. Every shot found something important: a reactor, a weapons system, a command bridge. There was no wasted ammunition. There were no missed opportunities. The human ship fought like a predator that had studied them for years. It knew exactly where to bite to cause the most pain. Watched another 12 ships die before his formation could escape. His proud assault group had been cut in half by a single enemy vessel. A vessel so small that it could have fit inside his own ship's cargo bay. He had never felt fear like this before. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out around every human ship. The 12 vessels refused to fight the way they expected. Military doctrine demanded that fleets face each other in massive formations. They expected enemies to line up and trade shots until one side was destroyed. It was how they had always fought. It was how they had always won. The humans did not fight this way at all. Instead, they struck and faded. They appeared where they were least expected. They delivered devastating attacks that killed dozens of ships. Then they vanished into the debris fields and sensor shadows before they could respond. They were like ghosts, deadly ghosts that killed and killed and killed. Commander Brooks led his 3-ship element through the heart of the formation. His vessel, the Nighthawk, served as the spear tip of their small attack group. Was a tall man from the colony world of New Houston. He had dark skin, a shaved head, and a reputation for creative tactical thinking that bordered on crazy. His superiors called him reckless. His crew called him brilliant. "Lisa, I need those platform schematics," he called out. His voice was calm even as enemy fire exploded all around his ship. Lieutenant Lisa worked the electronic warfare console with practiced skill. She was a small woman with long black hair tied in a tight bun. Her fingers moved across her controls without her even looking at them. "Already working on it. Their encryption is surprisingly simple. These aliens really thought nobody would ever hack their systems. Give me 60 seconds. "You have 30. Mark, keep us alive until then." Petty Officer Mark grinned from the helm station. He was a young man with red hair and freckles, the kind of face that made people think he was harmless. He was anything but harmless. He was the best pilot in the reconnaissance fleet. "That is what they pay me for, sir." The Nighthawk dove toward the nearest orbital platform. This platform was the size of a small moon. It bristled with weapon systems. Hundreds of defensive guns opened fire on the tiny human ship, the space around them filled with deadly energy. Threw the ship into a series of maneuvers that would have killed a lesser pilot. He spun the Nighthawk through gaps in the enemy fire that should not have existed. He used the platform's own massive bulk as cover against the pursuing warships. He flew so close to the platform's surface that the Nighthawk's belly almost scraped against it. "Got it," Lisa announced. Her voice was triumphant. "I have complete access to their systems, transmitting to all our ships now." Within minutes, every human vessel had complete tactical data on the defensive installations. They knew everything. Shield harmonics that showed exactly how to punch through their defenses. Weapon reload cycles that revealed the moments when they were vulnerable. The exact location of their primary reactor cores. Every secret they had tried to keep was now in human hands. The platforms did not last long after that. Commander Pete commanded the Stargazer, another frigate in the reconnaissance squadron. He was a stocky man with a thick mustache and a calm voice that never seemed to rise no matter what was happening. His crew loved him for that calmness. "Target the reactor core on Platform 2, he ordered. "Full spread quantum torpedoes." His weapons officer, a young woman named Jenny, smiled as she locked onto the target. Torpedoes away. 6 bright blue projectiles shot toward the orbital platform. The platform's point defense systems tried to stop them. They managed to destroy 2. The other 4 got through. They punched through the weakened shields exactly where Lisa's data said they would be weakest. They drove deep into the platform's structure. They found the reactor core. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface below. A new sun briefly appeared in the sky of IV as the platform died. 200,000 warriors died with it. They never even knew what had killed them. Fleet Commander watched the battle unfold from his command dreadnought, the Eternal Conquest. This ship was the largest vessel in the fleet. It was 3 kilometers long and crewed by 50,000 warriors, had commanded it for 30 years. He had won dozens of battles from this very bridge. He had never experienced anything like this. His fleet outnumbered the humans nearly 70-1, yet they were losing ships at a terrible rate. The humans remained almost untouched. Every few minutes, another cluster of his ships would explode. Every few minutes, his tactical display would update with more losses. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical advisor. Senior strategist Myra studied the displays with growing horror. She was old for her species, nearly 400 years, but her mind was still sharp. She had studied military tactics her entire life. She had helped plan the conquest of 6 different species. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. "Their technology is not much better than ours," she said slowly. "Their weapons, their shields, their engines, all within expected parameters, maybe 10 or 20% better than ours at most. That should not matter with our numbers." "Then explain what I am seeing," demanded. "It is their tactics, Commander, the way they fight. They act as individuals yet move as one. Every ship seems to know what the others will do before they do it. They coordinate without any visible communication. They adapt to everything we try within seconds. That is impossible without constant communication. We are jamming all frequencies. They cannot be talking to each other." "They are not communicating," Myra said slowly. Her voice was filled with wonder and fear. "They simply know. They have trained together so long, studied war so deeply, that they can predict each other perfectly. They do not need to talk. They think as one." Did not fully understand what she meant, but he knew one thing clearly. They were losing. After 4 hours of fighting, he had lost over 300 warships. All 3 orbital platforms were gone. The humans had suffered minor damage to only 2 of their vessels. He made the only decision he could make. "Signal the retreat. All forces withdraw to the assembly point. We cannot win this battle." The order went out. Across the battlefield, surviving vessels broke off their attacks. They turned and fled toward the edge of the system. Many of them were damaged, some barely held together. They limped away from a battle they should have won easily. The humans let them go. Moore watched the alien fleet run away. She felt quiet satisfaction but no joy. This was not about glory or victory. This was about information. She pressed the button on her chair that connected her to the entire squadron. All ships hold position. Let them go. We are not chasing them, asked over the comm. His voice carried a hint of disappointment. He had been enjoying the fight. Negative, we have what we came for. Full sensor logs, complete tactical analysis. A very good understanding of how they fight and how they think. Mission accomplished. The 12 vessels of the Terran Naval Intelligence Reconnaissance Squadron formed up around the Wanderer. Their hulls showed scorch marks and minor damage from the few hits they had taken, but every ship was intact. Every crew member was alive. As they prepared for the jump back to human space, allowed herself a small smile, just a small one. Danny, send the mission complete signal to Fleet Command. Tell them they are exactly as predictable as we hoped, and tell them we are coming home with everything they asked for and more. Danny's fingers flew across his console. Message sent, Commander. Leaned back in her chair. Around her, her crew began to relax. The tension of battle slowly drained away. Some of them laughed quietly. Others simply sat in silence, grateful to be alive. Good work, everyone said. We did something important today. When the main fleet comes through here, they will know exactly what to expect. They will know exactly how to win. Because of us. Christopher Hayes looked up from his sensor station. Commander, I have completed the initial analysis of our data. We recorded over 400 different ship classes. We mapped their entire defensive network. We cracked their encryption and downloaded their tactical database. Intelligence is going to be analyzing this for months. Years, corrected. This is enough data to understand everything about how they make war, and they do not even know we have it. The Wanderer's engines hummed as they powered up for the jump to hyperspace. One by one, the 12 human ships vanished from IV's orbital space. They left behind the wreckage of over 300 alien warships. They left behind the expanding debris fields of 3 massive orbital platforms. They left behind hundreds of thousands of dead aliens. And they left behind fear. 6 standard days later stood in the ancient council chamber of the. He had been summoned to explain his defeat. The chamber was carved from living rock, shaped by master craftsmen over thousands of years. It had witnessed many important moments in Dominion history. Today, it would witness one more. The 12 members of the Supreme Council sat in elevated positions around the room. They looked down with cold eyes. The Supreme Counselor herself, an ancient female named, sat in the highest position. Her 4 eyes fixed on him like a predator studying prey. You lost 347 warships, stated. Her voice was like ice. 3 orbital defense platforms, nearly 60,000 warriors dead, and you did not destroy a single enemy vessel. Stood straight despite his shame. The humans fought in ways we have never seen before. Their coordination, their precision, their willingness to take risks that seemed suicidal. They fought without any apparent fear. A convenient excuse for incompetence. It is not an excuse, Supreme Counselor. It is intelligence we desperately need. These humans are not like the other species we have conquered. They do not fight to hold territory. They do not fight to protect resources. They fight to learn. Everything they did was designed to test us, to understand us, to find our weaknesses. The council members murmured among themselves. Some dismissed his words as the desperate explanation of a failed commander. Others looked thoughtful. They had heard rumors about these humans, strange stories from traders and spies in neutral space. Finally, raised her hand for silence. Her ancient face showed something had never seen there before. Fear. We have received a communication from our intelligence agents in the neutral territories, she said slowly. They have obtained information about the human military structure, information that changes everything. She paused. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The force you engaged at IV was designated as a reconnaissance squadron, 12 vessels operating under something called the Terran Naval Intelligence Division. She looked directly at. They were scouts, Commander. Their primary mission was observation and data collection. Combat was only a secondary objective. Felt his blood turn cold in his veins. Scouts. Those ships that destroyed a third of my fleet were scouts. According to our intelligence, the standard Terran battle fleet consists of between 80 and 120 capital ships. Each capital ship is supported by dozens of smaller vessels and hundreds of fighter craft. What you faced was the equivalent of their patrol force, their small patrol force. The chamber erupted in chaos. Commanders shouted questions. Council members demanded clarification. Some simply refused to believe what they were hearing. It was too terrible to accept. Stood in stunned silence. His mind raced through the implications of what he had just learned. If 12 scout ships could do this much damage to 800 warships, what would a full battle fleet accomplish? The math was simple and terrifying. A standard human fleet would be able to destroy everything the Dominion had. Every ship, every station, every planet. They would be helpless. Senior strategist Myra had accompanied to the council chamber. She stepped forward now, her clutched in her wrinkled hands. Supreme Counselor, I have spent the past 6 days analyzing every piece of data from the battle. I have also studied everything we know about human military history. What I have learned is deeply disturbing. Speak, commanded. The human species has been waging war against itself for its entire existence. They have a very long history of conflict. Unlike us, they did not unify peacefully. They unified through thousands of years of warfare. They have refined combat into an art form. Then they refined it further into a science. Then into something beyond either. What do you mean by that? They do not fight wars the way we do. For the Dominion, war is a tool. We use it to expand our territory, to acquire resources, to add new slave species to our empire. When we have conquered enough, we stop fighting. War is a means to an end. And for the humans? Myra's voice dropped lower. For humans, war is survival. They have faced extinction multiple times throughout their history, sometimes from natural disasters, sometimes from diseases, often from each other. Each time, instead of collapsing, they adapted, they evolved, they became stronger. She pulled up a historical file on her. The display projected into the air above her. 300 years ago, they nearly destroyed their own planet. They developed weapons called nuclear bombs. These weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds. They built thousands of them, tens of thousands. They aimed them at each other. For decades, they lived with the knowledge that their entire species could be destroyed in hours. And yet they survived, said. They did more than survive. They used that fear to unite. They stopped fighting each other. They built ships that could travel between stars. They spread out into the galaxy. The very thing that almost destroyed them became the foundation for their expansion. Commander, who had survived the battle at IV, spoke up from his position among the defeated commanders. I saw what their ships could do. Their technology was good but not impossibly advanced. We should have been able to defeat them with our numbers. Numbers mean nothing against them, Myra replied. When they encountered their first hostile alien species 50 years ago, something called the hierarchy, they were outnumbered and they had twice as many ships and better weapons. The humans won anyway. How? They refused to fight the war they expected. They attacked supply lines instead of fleets. They used small ships to harass and distract while larger forces struck at critical targets. They turned this own population against their rulers through propaganda and bribery. Within 3 years, the hierarchy collapsed entirely. The chamber fell silent again as Myra continued. When the collective attempted to enslave their colony worlds 20 years ago, the humans did not merely defend themselves. They did not simply push the back. They dismantled the collective entirely. I thought the collective was destroyed by internal rebellion, one council member said. That is the official history. The truth is quite different. Myra's voice grew even more serious. Human special operations teams infiltrated collective space. Small groups of their soldiers, sometimes only 4 or 5 individuals, slipped past every defense they had. Over a period of 6 months, they systematically killed every member of the ruling caste. Over 200 assassinations, and they never caught a single human operative. Impossible, someone muttered. The rebellion that followed was not spontaneous. Human intelligence agents had spent years preparing it. They identified potential rebel leaders. They supplied weapons and training. They created a revolution that looked natural but was entirely manufactured. The collective never had a chance. Supreme Counselor leaned forward. Her 4 eyes were wide now. You are saying we face an enemy that cannot be defeated through conventional means. Myra hesitated before answering. When she spoke, her words were careful and heavy. I do not know if they can be defeated at all, but I know this with absolute certainty. What we faced at IV was not their strength. It was not even close to their strength. What we faced was their curiosity. They wanted to see how we fight, how we react to pressure, how we think when things go wrong. Now they know all those things. And what comes next? Asked, the question he had been dreading. Myra brought up a star chart. It showed the border between territory and human space. A vast expanse of unclaimed systems separated them, but that separation seemed much smaller now than it had a week ago. Our intelligence suggests the humans are gathering a large fleet presence along the neutral zone. Conservative estimates place their numbers at over 200 capital ships. At least 2 full battle groups, maybe more. 200. Commander looked like he might be sick. We have 600 warships remaining in active service. After battle losses and repairs, maybe 500 can actually fight. Numbers may not matter, Myra repeated. We outnumbered them nearly 70-1. We lost. Against a force of 200 capital ships with their tactical abilities, I calculate our chances of military victory at approximately 4%. 4%, his voice rose sharply. That may be generous. Their coordination, their technology, their experience, everything suggests they are far more capable than what we saw at. Those scout ships were holding back. They were testing us, not trying to destroy us. Then what do you recommend? Myra looked at each commander in turn. Then she looked up at the Supreme Council. She had served the Dominion her entire life. She had helped conquer 6 species and expand their empire across hundreds of star systems. What she was about to say went against everything she had ever believed. Surrender. Open negotiations immediately. Hope they are more merciful than we would be in their position. The word hung in the air like poison gas. Surrender. The Dominion had never surrendered to anyone. They were conquerors. They were the masters of all they surveyed. The very idea was unthinkable. And yet, looked at the star chart showing human fleet positions. He looked at the recordings of his own ships dying by the hundreds. He looked at his fellow commanders, all of them proud warriors who had never tasted true defeat until now. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should consider other options first. Diplomacy, trade agreements, anything to delay a full confrontation until we better understand what we face. Supreme Counselor stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. We will send envoys. We will try to negotiate, but we will also prepare for the worst. She stood, her ancient body straightening with the weight of command. Begin mobilizing all reserve forces. Recall every ship from patrol duty. Fortify our border systems. And if diplomacy fails, someone asked. Did not answer. She did not need to. Everyone in the chamber knew what would happen if diplomacy failed. They would fight, they would lose, and the Dominion would become nothing but a memory. 3 weeks passed after the Battle of IV. During that time, the worked desperately to prepare for what might be coming. They gathered their fleets. They strengthened their defenses. They sent diplomatic envoys toward human space carrying offers of peace and trade. Those envoys never received any response. Instead, on the 23rd day after the battle, the 7th and 9th battle groups of the Terran Navy dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of territory. 216 warships appeared in perfect formation. They arranged themselves in neat lines that spoke of absolute discipline. Their weapons were already charged. Their crews were already at battle stations. They had come prepared for war. Admiral Sandra Perry stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Unconquered. This ship was the flagship of the 7th Battle Group, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the largest warship. Sandra was 63 years old, with silver hair cut short and a uniform that showed no wrinkles. Her eyes were gray and cold, like winter ice. She watched the tactical display update with enemy positions. They had done exactly what her intelligence officers predicted. They had concentrated nearly 500 ships in a defensive formation. They had placed themselves between the human fleet and their core worlds. They were ready to make their stand. They are preparing to fight, her tactical officer reported. Lieutenant Commander Bobby was young for his position, only 31, but brilliant at his job. Sandra nodded slowly. They believe this is their best chance. Mass their forces. Try to overwhelm us with numbers before we can establish a foothold. She studied the enemy formation carefully. Decades of experience let her see patterns that others might miss. They are wrong. Orders, Admiral. Sandra turned to face her crew. The bridge of the Unconquered was a large space, filled with dozens of officers and crew members. These men and women had trained their entire careers for moments like this. They were the best humanity had to offer. They knew it. She knew it. Signal all ships. Execute Operation Thunderclap. She paused, then allowed herself a small smile. Time to show what a real human fleet looks like. The battle that followed would be recorded in histories as the Day of Fire. Teachers would tell their students about it for generations. Parents would use it to frighten their children. It became the darkest day in the history of their species. The fighting lasted less than 6 hours. The human fleet did not simply attack. It performed. Every ship moved with perfect precision. Every weapon fired at exactly the right moment. Every maneuver served a purpose. They found themselves trapped, outmaneuvered, and systematically destroyed. Admiral Perry directed the battle from her command chair like a conductor leading a symphony. She saw patterns in the chaos that no commander could perceive. She gave orders that seemed to predict what the enemy would do before they did it. 3rd Division, wheel left and engage their flank. 5th Division, hold position and draw their fire. Carrier Group, launch all fighters for a strafing run on their command ships. The orders went out, the ships responded, they died. Commander watched from his flagship as his fleet was torn apart. He had positioned himself in the center of the formation, surrounded by his strongest ships. He thought this would keep him safe. He was wrong. A human cruiser, just one ship, broke through his defensive screen. It ignored the dozens of vessels trying to stop it. It flew directly toward the eternal conquest with a single-minded purpose that seemed almost personal. All weapons target that ship, screamed. His gunners tried. They fired everything they had. But the human ship was too fast, too agile. It dodged their shots. It returned fire with surgical precision. It killed the ships protecting him one by one. When it finally came within range, it launched a single torpedo. Had exactly 3 seconds to realize he was going to die. 3 seconds to think about everything he had done and everything he had failed to do. 3 seconds to regret laughing when he first heard that 12 human ships were approaching IV. The torpedo struck his bridge. The explosion killed him instantly. When the battle ended, the results were staggering. 437 warships had been destroyed or disabled. The debris field stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Over 2 million warriors were dead. Their fleet, the pride of their entire civilization, had been reduced to scattered remnants fleeing in every direction. Human losses totaled 11 vessels. None of them were capital ships, just 11 small frigates and destroyers that had pushed too far forward or been unlucky. 11 human ships lost, 437 ships destroyed. The numbers told the story better than any words could. 3 days later, the new Supreme Counselor of the Dominion sent a message to the human fleet. He surrendered unconditionally. He offered whatever terms the humans wanted. He begged only that his people be allowed to survive. Admiral Perry accepted the surrender. She was not cruel. She did not seek to destroy them completely. She only wanted to ensure they would never threaten humanity again. The Treaty of was signed 1 month later. They gave up all claims to the outer territories. They reduced their fleet to 100 ships. They agreed to open their space to human trade and travel. They became, in everything but name, a subject people. And they never forgot what had happened. They never forgot that they had lost their empire because they underestimated a reconnaissance squadron. 12 ships, just 12 ships had started their downfall. 1 year after the Treaty of, Moore stood in a newly built memorial garden on IV. The planet had become a symbol of the war. Its orbital space was still cluttered with debris from both battles. Some of that debris would fall from the sky for decades, burning trails across the atmosphere like artificial meteor showers. Had been promoted to captain. She had been offered command of her own cruiser. She had been offered positions on half a dozen admirals' staffs. She had turned all of them down. "You could have been running your own battle group by now," Admiral Perry said, walking up to stand beside her. The admiral was on IV for the anniversary ceremonies. She had requested a meeting with personally. Instead, you asked for another reconnaissance assignment. Smiled slightly. She was still a small woman with short brown hair and calm gray eyes. Combat and promotion had not changed her much. "Someone has to be first through the door, Admiral. Might as well be someone who knows what they are doing. The Council of Species is worried about us. They think we are building an empire." "Are we?" Perry thought about the question carefully before answering. She watched a family walk past them in the garden. The parents kept their heads down, but their children stared at the humans with open curiosity. Fear and curiosity mixed together. "I think we are building something," Perry finally said. "Whether it becomes an empire depends on choices we have not made yet." She looked around the garden. Human and civilians walked the paths together. They were not friendly. Trust would take generations to build, but they were not fighting either. The Dominion was our enemy. Now they are our allies. That is a better outcome than anyone expected. "Because we were strong enough to win and wise enough to stop," said. "Exactly." Perry turned to face her fully. "That is why we need people like you. People who understand that the goal is not conquest. The goal is security, peace. A future where humanity does not have to fight alone against everything that wants to destroy us." Thought about the battles she had fought over the years, the enemies she had faced, the friends she had lost along the way. War had defined her entire adult life. Sometimes she forgot what she was actually fighting for. But standing here, in this garden built on the ashes of war, watching former enemies trying to live together in peace, she remembered. "I will take the assignment," she said. "Where are you sending me this time?" Perry handed her a with the mission briefing. "The Outer Rim. Our long-range sensors have picked up something interesting about 600 light-years beyond our current border. An unknown civilization, technologically advanced. possibly hostile. Another enemy. Maybe a future ally. That is what you need to find out. Perry gave her a look that was almost warm, almost. 12 ships just like last time. Do you think you can handle it? She scrolled through the preliminary data. Strange energy signatures, unusual ship designs. A civilization that had never made contact with any known species. Complete unknowns waiting in the darkness between stars. She smiled. I always handle it. As she walked away from the garden, felt something she had not felt in years. Hoping. The universe was vast and full of dangers. There were species out there who would kill humanity if they got the chance. There were threats that nobody had even imagined yet. The darkness between stars held secrets that might be wonderful or terrible. But humanity was ready. They had proven themselves They had shown the galaxy what a simple reconnaissance squadron could do, what a full battle fleet could accomplish. And now they were going further, pushing deeper into the unknown, looking for new friends and new enemies alike. Returned to the Wanderer and began preparing for another mission. Her crew assembled around her, the same people who had fought beside her at IV. They were older now. Some had new scars, but they were still the best at what they did. All right, everyone, she said as they gathered on the bridge. We have a new assignment, 600 light-years out, complete unknown territory, no backup, no support, just us and whatever we find out there. Christopher Hayes grinned from the sensor station, just like old times. Better than old times. We actually know what we are doing now, settled into her command chair. It fit her perfectly, worn into the exact shape of her body by years of use. Danny, signal the squadron. We move out in 6 hours. Yes, Commander, I mean Captain. Danny smiled at his own mistake. He still was not used to her new rank. Is fine. We have been through too much together for titles. The bridge crew shared smiles and knowing looks. They had faced death together more times than they could count. They were more than colleagues. They were family. 6 hours later, 12 human ships jumped into hyperspace. They left behind the known galaxy. They left behind safety and certainty. They flew toward something new, something unknown, something that might kill them or might change everything. But that was what scouts did. That was what humanity did. They pushed forward. They explored. They faced danger with courage and skill and the absolute confidence that came from knowing they were the best. They had learned that lesson the hard way. Whoever waited at the end of this journey would learn it too. Because humanity was not content to stay safe at home, they would never stop exploring, never stop pushing boundaries, never stop being the first ones through the door. And the stars themselves would learn to respect them. One reconnaissance mission at a time.